You know what I watched last week?
What did you watch last week?
Fall Guy.
Oh, how was it?
It started out pretty rough and ended up pretty good.
I mean, what was it on?
Yeah.
It's just not gonna answer this.
That was it. I don't know.
You know how I write my notes on like Post-it notes and I just stick them everywhere? I wrote a couple of notes for our episode that we're going to record, and literally on the Post-it note, it says, I wrote this with an erasable pen.
So Fall Guy was on Peacock.
Peacock has a lot of good movies.
Solid service.
I agree.
That was also my way of not acknowledging your dumb pen comment.
Look, all I can tell you is that I started writing a couple other notes and I had a change of heart and I erased those bullet points and rewrote my new ideas. And I could not have done that if I didn't have an erasable pen.
They just charged you more for a pencil.
I don't have a witty comeback for that.
Yeah, I got him.
But pencils don't have pretty colors like this one is blue, and I have a red one.
Have you ever heard... you really just got to listen for a second. Have you ever heard of a colored pencil?
Yes, I have. Crayola makes those, right?
Yeah,
but those aren't erasable. You can't really erase colored pencils.
You know what else Crayola makes?
Really yummy candy.
Punch it to me.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the ColbyCast, where we dive into movies,
21 gigawatts!
TV.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
And everything in between.
Well, I don't know how you get a podcast, but you should look into it.
I'm Colby, and I'm joined by my two awesome sons, Caleb.
I don't know how to tie my shoes.
And Luke.
I never shut up.
Together, we're your friendly neighborhood pop culture nerds, here to share our thoughts on Star Wars, Marvel, the latest entertainment news, and maybe even some sports.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
So grab a piece of cake.
Cake! Everybody loves cakes.
And find a comfy spot on the couch, because this is your place for community and conversation about pop culture and storytelling.
What an incredible smell you've discovered.
Speaking of candy, what's your favorite Halloween candy? I had to put mine in the categories. I literally broke out like 3 categories because I couldn't settle on one. What about you guys? What's your favorite Halloween candy?
I struggle not to pick Sour Patch in every category of what's your favorite Halloween candy, what's your favorite candy, what's your favorite gummy, what's your favorite sour candy. It's always Sour Patch for me.
I don't know if they've done it in the past, but Kit Kat white chocolate is now branded as bones, so you can break a bone for Halloween. Not literally break a bone, but like a mummy. It's genius.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
We should get some of those.
We absolutely should. I feel like Kit Kat is the best. I feel like Reese's are hit or miss for me. What are they called? Are they called fast breaks? No, that's basketball. Something
No, but
break.
there's a fast break. It's a candy bar though.
But the one I'm thinking of is by Reese's and has chocolate and marshmallow stuffing and covered in chocolate. I don't know. That's top tier, but is very sweet and have not had one in like months because they're so sweet. But something about Reese's pumpkins, like the normal Reese's cups shaped like pumpkins for Halloween, I think that is the best Halloween candy.
Yeah, well, I think it has extra peanut butter candy, whatever. I don't think that's real peanut butter. It's some kind of something, but it's those are delicious. I feel like there's more weight to those.
Overrated, underrated, properly rated. Candy corn.
I think it depends on how you think other people rate it, because I don't think people are like super crazy over it.
I feel like other people will be like, candy corn is the best Halloween candy.
think
I mean,
people
I think
used to get that.
it has a place in the pantheon of Halloween candy. It's I feel like it's more like an icon of the season than I don't know of anybody that ever gives away candy corn. How do you even give away candy corn and trick or treat? Do they have like little pouches of candy corn? No, I don't
I've
think so.
only
It's
seen like
always just
massive bags of them.
right. You just put it in a dish and then you go and like grab it. I can't imagine giving that out in trick or treat.
It
I
really
think it's
bothers me that they don't sell it on the cob.
it's a brilliant idea. Maybe you should invent that. How come somebody hasn't invented that? Candy corn on the cob. So my first category is chocolate categories, and my picks are Twix, Kit Kat, and Reese's. My second
Replace
category,
Reese's with Snickers, and it's a correct list.
According to USA Today, the top 10 most popular candies in America are Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. That was beat it butter. Peanut
beady,
butter.
beady, peanut butter cup.
Reese's, M&M's, Hot Tamales, Skittles, Sour Patch, Starburst, Hershey's Kisses, Candy Corn, Hershey's Mini Bars, and Snickers.
I can't believe candy corn made the list. What number was it? Like 8?
It was 8.
0% chance that that list is legitimate because there's no way hot tamales are that high.
Yeah, this was published at 6 o'clock in the morning on October 10th, 2023, and then later updated on October 30th, 2023. So it's dated. It is a year old almost. No, it is a year old.
So my second category is lollipops. Uh, any lollipops, but they have to be cherry flavor or apple.
Cherry
I'm a fan
sucks.
of. No, cherry's the best. Cherry's
Cherry.
the best. The red,
Cher-
and you
There's a reason they make like medicine out of cherry flavor. Is because they
because it's the
don't want
best.
people. No, it's because they don't want people to over drink the thing, and because there were too many cherry flavors just laying around, so they put it in medicine instead.
I will admit to everyone, just don't tell mom. Don't tell mom that I had a lollipop today at work. And
Was it a
I
crunchy one?
is there any other kind of lollipop? I mean,
I so wish that one day I can just record you eat a lollipop because it is hilarious. It is so funny.
I can't resist just not chomping down on it. Crunch, 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 crunch.
Have you ever heard the thing where it's like you have immortality, but as long as a snail doesn't catch you, but the snail's one sole purpose is to catch you, and if it
No, that's
catches you,
terrifying. Now I have nightmares. What? Is
well,
this?
you're not immortal. I don't know if you know that.
I know that.
Okay. I feel like you eat lollipops like that snail is chasing you.
100%. And one of my favorite commercials of all time is the old. I don't even know if you have seen this, but you've lived it a million times. But I don't know if you've ever seen this commercial. It's an old commercial from my childhood, and it was how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
A one,
And
a two.
then let me tell you, ColbyCast listeners, it takes me 0 licks to get to the middle of a Tootsie Pop. And
Dentists hate to see you coming.
no, they love me because they
No,
know
they
they're gonna
hate to
make
see you
fun of
coming
me.
because you have a set of pearly whites, but you still do that.
My teeth are fine. Yeah. So I really sort of avoid the lollipops in general just because I know they're not going to last. It's just going to turn into dust in my mouth. And then the last category I have are gummy category. And big fan of ropes, sweet tart ropes. So good. and Sour Patch Kids also. And I also we got some candy, and we uh, we had it at your birthday party recently, Luke. Yes, belated birthday to happy birthday to Luke. If you follow us on the ColbyCast social media, you got to see a lovely picture of him on his birthday. And they're like these little chewy cherry bomb things. They're like sour cherry. They're delicious. They're so good. So I'm adding those to the list of the gummy. I don't know what the brand is. They're just really good. So I don't know. Do I
I
have too
didn't
many candies
use.
on my list?
No, you can never have too many candies. But what I was gonna say was I didn't used to be into gummies all that much, but Luke has since worn me down, and Sour Patch Kids. But my favorites are the blue ones or the watermelon ones.
You know, it's sort of odd because they're like the original gummy candy, but like every other gummy candy is better than gummy bears. I've never been a big fan of gummy bears, so
True.
sorry.
I had a bag of what? How do you pronounce it? Haribo.
Yeah, Haribo. Yeah.
Haribo mix, and it had like the little Coca-Cola bottles. It had the gummy bears, the gummy worms. It had gummy snake twins or something where they were like attached to each other. Um, yeah, it was okay. I was pretty disappointed with it, but there is a very niche and specific candy, gummy candy, that I will always get every time I see it. It's not Swedish fish, it's Swedish fish and friends.
Who are the friends?
I'm so glad you asked. It's the green turtle and the pink dolphin.
I had no idea that these existed.
It makes the
Are-
Swedish fish taste better.
Interesting.
I
Are
don't
they
know.
also Swedish?
No, they're Norwegian. Um, I don't know if it's like a. It can't be, but you know how like all the M and M's are the same flavor, but they're different colors, so your brain thinks that they're different flavors, right?
Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Red is always cherry. Purple is grape, etc., etc.
Well, it's chocolate, so I hope it wouldn't be cherry chocolate, but um, I'm talking about the M and M's. But for the Swedish fish, I don't know if they're different. I remember I got them once just because I was like, "Oh, cool, that looks different," and now I know exactly which 7-Elevens in my local area carry them, just in case I'm itching for one.
You go walking in the store for a resupply. And, Luke's back. Luke's back for more Swedish fish. And I totally missed the fact that you were talking about different color M&Ms being the same flavor. So yeah, please disregard the cherry flavored M&M talk. I don't think that exists. Um, I did want to ask you one question before we get to the movie that we're going to be talking about tonight. And I just want to make sure, Luke, are you emotionally okay because the Padres lost? Are you doing all right? Do you need to talk about your feelings or anything like
Honestly, it's probably for the best. I just need the Dodgers to get eliminated so I can start pretending like I care about baseball. Um,
that?
it, I was hate watching a couple games between the Padres and the Dodgers. Um, but now I am not even paying attention to the scores anymore. It's just wake me up when this nightmare is over. Wake me up when the Mets win it all. Go Mets.
I can't really comment on the Dodgers or Mets because when we're recording this, as opposed to when it comes out for the enjoyment of all the listeners, the series could be very drastically different than what it is right now. So we're just going to leave the Dodgers and Mets alone and congratulate you on your next hate watch, which is now the Dodgers and the Mets. And go Shohei Otani and my man Mookie Betts because he's the bomb. And Caleb, you're happy because the Dodgers advanced, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir.
And thus concludes the sports ball segment of the ColbyCast. Oh, by the way, hockey started. Woohoo! Hockey
Not
has
that
started.
woohoo. The Kings stink.
The Kings have not lost a game in regulation as of the recording of this recording. So,
They got
they just
scored on enough today that they lost 7 games.
They allowed 8 goals in one game. Yeah, so that's not great, but
And they lost by
yeah.
1. I don't know
Yeah,
why
that's
you're
crazy.
pretending like you like hockey. We turn on hockey and you don't pay attention to most of it, and then when you do pay attention, you complain about a soft call or that the new style of game is boring or video review or how soft everyone is. We're going to put on like old 1940s hockey so you can relive your glory days of when all the real athletes were fighting in Berlin, and you got to watch your chimney sweeps and plumbers play the good old hockey game.
First of all, what does Berlin have to do with anything? I don't understand that. Secondly, I take exception with most of what you just said. I have really stopped complaining about the style of game. I have you can't honestly say that I complain about that.
Like you
I
stopped
complain
complaining today? Like
what
you're actively making the decision to not complain going forward.
completely have stopped complaining about today's style of skill over physicality because I'm not looking for people to get broken brains and stuff like that. I'm all for it. It's all great. Everything it ebbs and
I
flows.
think I think we need to take this portion to video review, and I think that will trigger you.
Okay, that is what will trigger me, and that was going to be the next thing out of my face was video review in all sports, whether it's hockey or not, is the most boring enjoyment killing modern thing I have ever seen. I would rather take bad calls than have to sit there
You
and
would
watch a
rather
person
watch
watch the play over and over and over. It's enough. No more computers, no more video cameras. Just stop with the replays already.
you would rather watch the dead puck era,
It has nothing to do with video replay.
but
Nothing to do.
answer the question.
I lived through the dead puck era. It was fine. It's just fine.
Yeah,
It
you
wasn't
lived through it. Isn't the right term. You survived it.
dead puck era hockey was more exciting than 60% of live sports being replayed and us sitting there watching commercials while they do it or watching them watch replays. I've had it. It's enough.
You know what, Luke? It's really sad seeing your dad get old in front of you. It's rather morbid.
You know, the nurses know that when he starts complaining about stuff like that, that they just have to up the meds and turn on some, I don't
Yeah,
know, Charlie
change his
Chaplin
diaper and up the
silent
meds.
films to please the old man.
Enough. Enough of your scallywagging. I
Give
can't
him the
do it.
TV guide.
Speaking of the TV guide, what a great segue. There is a great joke in the movie that we're going to discuss tonight uh, about the TV guide. And yes, it does reflect my age. So I have to tell you guys that I am extremely enthusiastic about the movie we're going to talk about tonight. And I am fully prepared to embarrass myself further while we talk about it. And lastly, before I reveal the film that we are going to discuss, even though everyone has already seen the episode art and knows we're going to be talking about this movie, I just wanted to thank you both because you're so good to me. You're so good to me. A couple weeks ago, I came up to you and I said, "Hey, would you guys like to watch The Lost Boys and then record an episode about it?" And you both very enthusiastically said, "Sure." It was just like that. That level of enthusiasm. It was sure, which is way better than like, oh my god, we have to watch another old movie from Dad's childhood. So yes, we watched The Lost Boys. I have no idea what you guys think about the movie. I can't wait to hear what you guys thought about the movie. This is the 1987 version of The Lost Boys. Not that there's any other version, but you know, that's just to be clear. 1987, it came out. Uh, it sort of revitalized the vampire genre because not a lot of vampire stuff was happening back then, and it sort of brought them back into the light. Ironically, because vampires get it, they don't, like. Anyway, so hit hit me with it. What did you guys think about the Lost Boys?
Okay, really quickly. What is the movie about the boys in Peter Pan who get lost?
Well, they're called the Lost Boys,
It's called
Okay, what is the
but
Surviving
movie?
Neverland with Michael Jackson.
no, that is certainly not. That's not what Caleb is talking about. Are you referring to Hook? Are you talking about Hook
There you go.
with Robin Williams?
Thank you. I knew they were called the Lost Boys, so I wasn't completely off. So when you said, "Do you want to watch the Lost Boys?" I was just like, "Sure." Like that has nothing to do with Halloween whatsoever.
Did you think I was talking about Hook?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Great.
So the other day when we watched The Lost Boys together, I was very confused to say the least. But did you know I was confused?
Not at all.
Only when
I
you
did
ask,
not see
where is
him.
the gay pirate?
Yeah, exactly. I um I just kept that to myself and I just sat there confused and thoroughly enjoyed the movie to be honest.
So you did like you, even though you thought it was going to be a Peter Pan movie.
Yeah, I was like,
You
"Where's
liked it.
Robin Williams?"
It's amazing. This is so
I liked
good.
it too. It
Really?
was
I'm so glad.
I know I had seen it, but it had been a while. So I went into it with an idea of what was gonna happen, but I totally forgot about like some really important parts. Like I knew the video store owner was the I knew he was the head vampire and stuff, but I forgot that the whole point was that he wanted like his own family and stuff. So that was a
Mm.
big that was a big plot point that I thankfully didn't remember. Um, I also thought like I feel like it ages well. There are certain movies that came out in the 80s that you just not to say that they're like bad, but they're very 80s movies, and I don't think that this was one of those. Like it definitely has the 80s feel because of the haircuts and the style and stuff like that, but I think it can still stand on its own, and especially when you open up a movie with a song by The Doors, you already have my attention.
Was that a pun?
That's pretty good.
No, it was not. All of my puns are accidental.
So, fun fact about that song, it's a Doors song covered by a band called Echo and the Bunnymen. And like if you wanted to try to stream the soundtrack of this movie, that song doesn't apply. It doesn't appear. I don't know why you can't play it. Probably some kind of rights issues. But yeah. And I'm a big fan of the Doors. This was the first version of that song that I heard as a kid because I'll reveal my age here and tell everyone that I saw this movie as a 12-year-old in the movie theater. Don't ask me how that happened, that I was able to see as a 12-year-old see a movie that was rated R and probably not appropriate for 12-year-olds whatsoever. But yeah, so that was the first time I heard that song. And then I always just thought it was the song from the Lost Boys. We're of course talking about People Are Strange. And later on in my life, when I found out that was actually a Doors song and heard it for the first time being performed by the Doors, I was like blown away. So side note. Um, when had you do you remember when you watched it last, Luke? Because Caleb, you don't think you had watched it at all, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
So
I
if
don't
you either watched it and completely forgot everything or you hadn't seen it. But Luke, you
Yes.
remember having watched it. When
I
was
know
that?
I've watched it with you, but it must have been, I'm guessing, 4 or 5 years ago, probably.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Um what was it? I love hearing what you guys have to say about like this movie from a bygone era. Because was it weird, like in any way? Did any of the things in it like sort of stick out to you? Because when I see this movie, I don't particularly think of it as like a real like 80s kind of movie. There's certain or images that definitely scream 80s, like Corey Haim's wardrobe in it, some of the earring stuff, some of the
Riding the
background.
motorcycles around the boardwalk.
But you remember when we did our episode about like the music videos, and there was that video that had like singing puppets. It was A Land of Confusion by Genesis, and they had
Yeah,
these like
so
really
exciting.
freaky, weird singing puppets. Now that's weird. Was there anything like that that stood out to you in this movie in that regard?
No, no, and I'd even take it a step further. I would say that this movie didn't even feel like a Lethal Weapon. You know, that's not to say that I'm hoping Lethal Weapon. Those movies came out in the '80s. I'm assuming they did, right?
Fun fact: Lethal Weapon, the original, actually came out the exact same year as The Lost Boys.
Okay, yeah. When I watch Lethal Weapon, it feels very, very '80s. Not just in like the tone of it, but also in like just the way that the film was made. Look at me saying stuff like film. Um, but The Lost Boys didn't really feel like that because it didn't feel like a coming of age story really. It was weird cuz like I don't even know how you would give a synopsis of the plot because it's very complicated. And I think what makes it feel sort of independent of everything else is that it's the way that they establish what's the name of the town? Santa Clara.
Santa Clara.
Oh, it's Santa Clara. I thought it was like a spin on Santa Clara.
You are one syllable off, dude.
Is it not
You
Santa Clara?
sold. No, it was, but you had said Santa Claire
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
completely
Uh,
sold it.
Santa
yeah,
Clarita? No,
yeah.
not Santa Clarita.
But like them immediately establishing like, yeah, this place is weird and it's different and it's not like anywhere else, and everybody knows that. That sort of made it feel like it was a. It didn't feel like this was any other town, and this could happen in your town, and that's what makes it appealing. Like this was independent of it.
Oh yeah, I think it's Santa Carla.
Yeah. This whole time I didn't want to bring it up and then be wrong after we just had a 2 minute conversation about it. It was definitely Santa Carla.
Yeah, not Santa Clara. I think Santa Clara actually is a place in
Santa Clara
California.
is a real place. And I kept having this internal dialogue while we watched it.
I think that's probably on purpose for the movie makers. Uh, and I believe it was filmed in Santa Cruz, which is also a real place in
I
California.
was
Of
gonna
course, it would
say
be.
it reminded me a lot of Santa Cruz.
So that whole amusement area, the amusement park thing, is a real place in Santa Cruz, California. Uh, and to further your point, Luke, they do a great job of like making this like freak town USA, right? It isn't no one should bat an eyelash at the fact that vampires exist in this town, because there's just every shape and size of and type of person in this town, and you get that really early on. One of the things, I mean, the very opening scene of the movie is like these well, like, we don't know they're vampires at that point, but this young group of thugs, I guess, if you wanted to use that word, like walking through this merry-go-round, and they're like, sort of making a move on this one girl, and the boyfriend starts getting aggressive, and the cop has to come up and tell him to keep moving and whatever. So we know, like, we've already seen like a sampling of the people in this town, and yeah, it's not it's certainly not your normal type of looking place. And then not long after that, we see this concert, the big bonfire and all these people like rocking out, and this huge jacked dude with a saxophone is rocking this crowd. And yeah, like, oh whoa, what is happening here? At the same time, kids are going to comic book stores, and the mom is even walking around. What's her name? Lucy's like walking around looking for a job. You have all these elements all at once. Fun quick side note, Caleb, you got to hear this in real time, but Luke, I'll share this with you. That guy playing that saxophone in the movie, his name is Tim Capello, and good friend of the show and honorary fourth member of the ColbyCast, Ross Holliman, has met Tim Capello twice. One just most recently, just a few months ago, this year sometime, he went to just like this heavy metal dive bar near his house, and Tim Capello was rocking the saxophone. So there's this. I have a cool picture of Ross and Tim, as well as Ross's girlfriend Monica and Tim. He says he's a great guy. He toured. He was in the touring band of Tina Turner. He played the saxophone during Tina Turner concerts. So we're like friend of the friend of Tim Capello. So how fantastic is that? Do you even know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's Tim Capello. He played the saxophone in the Tina Turner band and the Lost Boys.
Oh, you do listen. I'm so man. That just makes my heart so warm and happy. Was there
This movie,
anything?
before
Hmm?
you continue, I didn't answer.
Yeah.
This movie is absolutely so 80s. There's nothing you can do about it. It is so
No, I
80s.
disagree. I don't think so. What makes it
No,
so 80s?
absolutely is. The way they dress, the fact that Rob Lowe is a poster on the screen, this like the overall just movie making, like you could see that type of scene mix in different actors, whatever, who came out in movies that are so 80s as well, and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. The
Going to
fashion, the
what?
hairstyle, the overall just like tone of it, so 80s.
I agree
So I
with you
don't.
up until you say tone.
Okay, so what's different about the tone? Why is it not an 80s tone?
Because I feel like there are other movies that are similar to that outside of the 80s. Because I think the tone of it is like, obviously you have your like cheesy 80 moment, right? Every so often in it. But the tone of it felt like sort of how you would see a suspenseful movie that isn't quite a horror movie, but is still like, I don't know, because I would say this movie's almost like family centric. It's about a family, and I don't think that this is like a movie made for angry teens because angry teens don't want to go watch a movie about a happy family, right? Um, so I think
Right.
that automatically makes it different. But I mean, even the the characters themselves, some of them are like aggressively 80s, like the what are those brothers? The Frog Brothers?
Yep, the Frog Brothers, Edgar and Alan
Absolutely.
Frog.
Yeah, see, they feel very 80s, but I don't think that the things that they were doing or saying were specific to the 80s. I think it was just like the way that they looked and some of their dialogue might have been like to match it, but this feels like a sort of timeless story.
Oh, you took the word I was going to use, and if there's a way for both of you to be right, I think you both are right because yeah, like to both of your points, the fashion, the hairstyles, the I feel like I have to say this because I was thinking it as I was watching it. I've already mentioned Corey Haim's wardrobe. People didn't dress like that. People didn't dress like that. I have to just tell you, like
You
as a
dress like
source
that.
of who dresses like that.
You did.
No, I did not dress like that.
I've seen pictures.
Okay, this is my point. People wore very bright, vibrant day glow. That's what it was called, day glow colors. We're talking about like hot pink, turquoise. Everything was neon. People did that. He certainly had those colors in his wardrobe, but I don't remember ever, and I walked around the 80s for a long time, ever seeing anybody in like a head to toe overcoat that sort of flowed as you walked like he did when he was going in to visit the Frog Brothers comic book
Because
store.
he's a vampire.
I also think a part of that had to do with them trying to make it seem like he was an out of towner. I don't know if that was
100%. Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. They're distinguishing him from the rest of his new surroundings and yeah. So um oh man, there was something. This conversation's got my brain going. So it's going fantastic. It's just this is so exciting to me because we're not just rambling on about stuff. We're talking about actual like the film is timeless, but it's also 80s. So I was going back, I was talking about that, and I think the tone and the story is definitely timeless, but it's made in an 80s with the fashion and the hair and all that stuff and the music, especially the music. I mean, to be honest, it was sort of like a 90-minute or however long this movie is music video. Did you guys get a feeling that this is just a big long music video?
Um, I didn't have that thought, but now that you say it, I can see it. But I think that a big part of it was the fact that they didn't have a ton of music in it, right?
False. It's like there's a new song playing like every 6 minutes.
I thought they just kept playing the same song, like different parts of the same song.
They
Well,
did do that too, though. Yeah, they did.
that's what I was thinking of because, like, I don't know, there wasn't like a there was a music in it, but it didn't feel like this was a movie where there was like every time there was a change of scene that there was a song playing.
I felt like I
Go ahead,
was in a
Caleb.
state. I felt like I was in a state of like perpetually waiting for Danger Zone to play. So yes, I thought this was a very long, like, a long music video with like interludes of story mixed in.
But that's one of the things I love the most about it is because I really like the soundtrack of this movie.
Oh, for
Like
sure.
Cry Little Sister and Lost in the Shadows are bangers. Like I love listening to those songs, especially around this time of year when we're getting into like Halloween time. And it actually got into the 70s today here in Los Angeles. So that was our version of like a crisp fall day. And just turning those songs on and listening to them as you're driving to work or whatever, just is always something that I've enjoyed doing. Uh, even there's a couple of In Excess songs in it. So yeah, I would agree with the fact that it seems like it's a sort of like a long music video, but that's okay because I grew up watching music videos and this sort of slotted right in the time. Um, who do you guys think is the coolest character in the whole movie?
Nanook.
Good answer.
Yeah, Nanook was the goat. Nanook was good. What was the coolest human character?
Um, I thought Michael was a cool character, even though he was like sort of the center of all the conflict. Um, but I don't know what do you mean by cool? Like,
I don't know. This is the movie. You mentioned like what is the movie about? Like what is the story about? It's about this family that comes from wherever, and you know, story wise, I'm not sure that we're putting this up against like the greatest stories ever told. But the movie is cool. Like you can't disagree with that, right? That's just
yeah.
cool.
I see what you
So
mean.
it's
I
along
think
the same lines. Like who's the coolest of this cool movie?
I think Michael is the coolest because like he's sort of the one thrown into the muck, but he still like figures it out, you know. But if you're asking like who the character I liked the most was, that would be the little brother. I forgot his name.
Laddie, the vampire kid, or Sam, the Corey Haim guy?
I don't know who Corey Haim is. Michael's little brother.
Yeah, that's Corey Haim, Sam.
Yeah, I loved him. I thought he was funny. I loved the banter of like I don't like horror comics. And that whole thing back and forth where he was like, they were sort of test him out and feeling him out a little bit, and he was like standing his ground. He's like, I'm looking for four different for a specific Batman comic. There's only four in the world, and I'm always on the lookout for the other three. Like that was cool.
That was a flex. That was definitely a flex. A real quick story about that comic, not the Batman comic, the vampire comic. Before Caleb, you go. Uh, I read that the owner of that comic book store, and it was a real comic book store in Santa Cruz that they filmed that at. Unfortunately, it was destroyed. Part of that amusement park was destroyed in a earthquake just a couple years after they filmed there. but he has recently reopened, not recently, but after that, he reopened the comic book store and it's in Santa Cruz again. It's just a different location, and it's there for you to go to now. And he has that comic in the store, which was created only for the movie. That wasn't a real comic. It doesn't even have a comic in it. It's really just the cover. And on the first page, when you open it up, the whole cast signed it. And he has that comic in his comic book store. And he lets anyone that goes, he will let anyone like hold it, look at it, and take a picture with it. In real life, right now, we could go to Santa Cruz and hold that Vampires Anywhere comic book, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, but then we'd have to go to Santa Cruz.
If they still have that cool roller coaster and like a churro place, I'd be willing to go to Santa Cruz. Caleb, who do you think the coolest one was?
First, two things. One, that is a very cool tidbit. Two, Earthquake, I don't believe it. They made this film and the vampires thought this is getting too heavy, this is getting too real, and they destroyed it to try and get everybody off the scent that vampires are real.
I like it. Yeah, let's go with that story. I like that better.
Okay, but to answer your question, Grandpa is the coolest.
Grandpa's cool.
I would watch a prequel to him becoming Grandpa because that guy just knows everything.
I would really like to know how the Widow Johnson became the Widow Johnson.
Yeah.
Are you picking up what I'm laying down here?
Yeah, no, I do.
Yeah, because that guy.
That's a totally valid point.
I love the TV guide joke. Like he's telling the guys not to rip the label off the TV guide. And Luke, you didn't have the enjoyment of watching the movie with us when we were watching it, but you did get to hear the story. So I will tell you the story that Caleb got to hear, which was Mom sharing, yes, Dad did have the TV guide when he was growing up. And yes, I did read the TV guide when I was growing up. But I disagree with old man Grandpa. You need a TV still, even if you have the TV guide. So I think it's a funny joke, but I don't agree with it. My answer is the coolest character in this movie is by far, you both are wrong. It's David. It's Kiefer Sutherland. That he's the coolest vampire ever.
Seemed a little pretentious.
That's why he's so cool. 80s cool dudes are always pretentious and aloof.
Yeah. I thought the thing they did with the rice and the maggots and the chow mein and the worms, I thought that was a really good introduction of like who they were. And because they weren't just like, I'm gonna go hit on your girlfriend and then go kill a mall security cop, the dynamic between all of them was really interesting. And I think that he was obviously the alpha and all of that. But I don't know if I'd say he's the coolest. Maybe it was just because he was the most stereotypical. I didn't think that he was the coolest, but I see what you mean.
Kiefer Sutherland and everything that he does is always the coolest in everything that he does. Unless he's in a movie with Keanu Reeves, which I would actually love to see. Kiefer Sutherland is so awesome. You guys remember when I was obsessed with 24, right? We've never brought this up on the ColbyCast, but you guys remember when I was watching that show?
I do.
You guys should watch that show. That's a pretty amazing TV. I think you guys would like that, especially the earlier seasons. Even though it's a long TV series, so that you can't avoid getting into some repetitive stuff when you go like 7, 8, 9 seasons long. It sort of gets into that kind of stuff, but the first few seasons of that show is amazing, and Kiefer Sutherland is stellar throughout the whole run. It's just a really, really good show. Again, I haven't watched it in a long time, so I'm not sure if it's aged well, but I think Kiefer Sutherland has a lot to do with why David is the coolest. And I don't have the years in front of me, but he was also in Stand By Me as sort of like a menacing figure, sort of like a foil to the kids in that movie. And I don't necessarily think he was cool in that movie because he was a real jerk. But in this movie, he terrified 12-year-old me when they're there to like try to kill one of them, and he comes out of the dark and he's just in his full vampire. I remember seeing that and being like scared, like it's like a jump scare, right? So of course you're going to be a little bit shocked, but that was one of the moments that stayed with me as I grew up watching the movie. So it sort of leads me to my next question. From your 20 something perspective and growing up in the 2000s in this modern, everything we see on TV is like so sophisticated and all this stuff. Did you find in any way, shape, or form that this movie was scary at all?
Not at all. Not at all. Um, I was thinking about that when I saw that it was rated R before I started watching it, and I remembered what you said about like there was no PG-13. To me, this felt like a PG-13 movie. I didn't think it was particularly scary. The part where he like sort of explodes when he stabs him through the heart with the stake, that was like gross, but it wasn't graphic, you know? And
It was gross. Yeah, you're right.
but it wasn't like disturbing. Um and I think there wasn't much profanity in the movie either, was there?
I don't remember it being too excessive with like foul language, but the reason I think, and to make sure that we set the record straight, by this time PG-13 did exist. That was like I think 1982, 83 that they came out. So this was 87. And I think, and Caleb and I were even talking about this while we were watching it, like, why is this movie rated R? If you look like the very next year, Beetlejuice comes out and that's rated PG. It's sort of wonky. So either they were still feeling out the process and being like, what really is R versus what's PG-13 versus what's PG. What I think it's R is because it probably has just enough language to put it over the PG-13 threshold. Because I think you get one F bomb in a PG-13, but you can't get two. And then the two scenes that I think are really gross and gory probably earned it the R for the depiction of like they murdered a bunch of people by that bonfire. That was pretty graphic. Like they literally tear the head off of like the top of someone's head off.
Yeah, I forgot about
And
that's pretty bad.
and then the one where they kill fun fact, that is Alex Winter, the one that dies first, and he played Bill S. Preston Esquire in the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure movie and sequel and threequel. So yeah,
I still don't think I've seen that.
we should watch those. I haven't seen the third one, and I should have already watched it. But the first two, I remember they're. Yeah, you want to talk about 80s movies? We should watch those. Yeah, yeah. So, Caleb, did you find it at all remotely scary in any way, shape, or form?
No, but I could see, like, we were having the conversation as the movie was going on about how it's glorifying some not so good subjects and how that could possibly be why it got its rating. But when we looked it up and it said it was a horror movie, I was like, this is not a horror movie.
Actually, when I was googling it in a couple places, it comes through as a horror comedy. Was it particularly funny? Was it? Do you think it would be a comedy?
I think it was just like, I don't know what other term to call it. It was more like a spoof on horror without being like in your face making fun of horror movies. I know there's a word for that, but I can't think of it.
Spoof.
Spoof.
So
Spoof.
the equivalent that I see for it is like Toy Story is not a kids movie. It's a family movie. This
Sure.
is not a horror movie. It's a family horror movie. But do you see what I mean? Because during the time that the Lost Boys came out, there were actual horror movies out there, like scary movies,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I was watching them in Nightmare on Elm Street. The Friday the 13th films were big in the 80s.
The
Halloween, Michael
Exorcist.
Myers. Oh, The Exorcist was in the 70s and should never be spoken about. But yeah, that was a thing.
So it's
Yeah,
not
to your
like there
point.
weren't. It's not like this paved the way for horror movies or like other horror movies. you know, came off of this. This feels different, and it's interesting because they, we're talking about this like it's a Halloween movie. It takes place during the summer, right?
And it was released in July.
Yeah, but it has the feel of it, right? So I think the scary element is the vampires, and that aspect of it, I guess, is horror, the way that like Frankenstein would be a horror concept, even though it's not necessarily a horror in every adaptation of it.
I'm actually going to talk about genre right now. God, what is happening to us? Um, so I'm going to agree with your point and sort of add my twist to it this way. And it's horror as a genre is for specific horror fans, right? You go to see horror movies if you're a horror movie fan, expecting certain things because you're a fan of the genre. I don't think this movie fits into the horror genre. This is more like a horror movie made for the masses. Like this is a popular horror movie so that people that want to go see vampires tearing people's heads off will get what they're looking for, but people that don't necessarily need that for 2 hours will go and be entertained by the Frog Brothers and by Sam and by the family dynamic and the cool music and the cool visuals. So I think that's where the differentiation can come along. Is it's not necessarily a genre horror movie, but it's a horror movie made for the masses. So I'm just gonna hang up the mic now because like I think that's the most intelligent thing I've ever uttered on this show. So
Very smart.
It was weirdly coherent.
weirdly coherent indeed. I have another question for you both because I know that you guys are very sophisticated movie watchers. I feel like after having watched this movie now, that it telegraphs very early on who the head vampire is. And then it tries to trick you out of thinking that that's a thing, but then it circles back around. And in fact, it is the head vampire is the person you think it is. And of course, I'm talking about Max. Um, as a kid, I'm thinking the whole way through that David is the head vampire. So that when he dies, nothing changes, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so weird." There's like this moment, a couple minutes of like confusion, what's happening, which is supposed to make you feel uneasy too, right? And then of course Max comes along, and then you wonder, like, well, why did that? Why? How is he the head vampire? He didn't, he passed all the tests, and then he explains about being invited in and the whole thing, blah blah blah. Did you guys? Trying to think back to the first time Luke, you had said you had forgotten that Max was the guy. Did you figure that out as the movie was telling you this story, or was that an actual twist that caught you by surprise?
I knew that he was the big bad. I just forgot why he was the big bad. Um, so it didn't really catch me off guard, but I see why people thought that David was the big bad. I mean, he had all the makings of it, right? Even in the conversation in the cave when they take Michael there for the first time, he's the one leading the charge. He's the one calling the shots, right? So I see where the twist could come from, but it wasn't there for me.
Caleb, you are famously braggadocious about coming along and knowing about twists before they happen, and I'm gonna assume that you knew about this one. But tell me, am I right?
I'm not braggadocious. I just speak facts.
You're not braggadocious. You just brag a lot.
Yep. Sounds like a rap bar. I like it.
Brag a lot.
Um, the way my brain works doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to try to explain how I know things are going to happen just based off of like logic. Because if you remove Max's introduction and the role he plays in the movie without thinking of any head vampire at all, his character, his placement makes no sense at all.
Sure, that's
But
true.
but the minute that you start to think, okay, he has a part to play in the actual plot, it makes perfect sense, and it only points to him, even though they make David seem like he's the only. There's no other way but him being the head vampire. So because of that, I just knew from the get go that Max, as much as they spun him as this nice guy who like just seems like he just runs this store to help people, and it just made too much sense to not be him, you know?
Yeah, it's true. Did the fake out with him passing the tests work at all, or were you just like, were you confused? Were you even a little bit? Did you take that bite, that hook, the bait?
I I just took it as like a bait and switch. I didn't know how they were gonna come to a resolution with it, but I knew they would.
You know how when you know something, you can't unknow it, right? So
Yeah.
now, the first time you see the movie, you know who Max is by the end, and every time you watch it after the fact, it is what it is. He's the guy. I'm not sure anybody was watching this movie for the story anyway. Like I said, this is just a cool movie with cool music and cool performances and cool people doing cool things. But I particularly latched on to the fact this last time that we watched it that Max from the beginning is just a super creepy dude.
Yeah.
He's sort of like a creep. The way he talks about his dog, he's like, "Oh, Thorn." So weird. And then he's just like super, in a way, like sort of like low key aggressive with, trying to ask Lucy out time after time. And, he's just like planting kisses on her. And, of course, as the 80s is a different time, but that kind of stuff can't happen. Like, it shouldn't have even been happening back then. He's just
You
being
don't
a
think
weirdo.
game show hosts should open mouth kiss every woman that they have on their show?
No, 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 no. Yes, and that is a Family Feud reference. I remember we showed you guys like old clips of Family Feud. There's actually like a Family Feud channel on one of those streaming services, like that you get with your TV. I can't remember which one it is. And we were like, look,
YouTube.
look, look. This guy, it was like literally these shows from like the 70s and 80s, and we're like, this is the guy that would kiss everybody. And just the look on both of your faces were just hilarious because it was just so weird. A couple things I wanted to share about the movie before we end our conversation here. Unless you guys have, and if you have any final thoughts, feel free to let me know. The director, well, no, the director of Lethal Weapon, actually, Richard Donner, he was supposed to um, direct this movie, but he got offered Lethal Weapon and he chose to go do that. But he continued to stay on on the Lost Boys as an executive producer. But in Lethal Weapon, there's a scene where Riggs and Murtaugh are walking down the street, and there's a movie theater that they walk by, and on the marquee of the movie theater it says like now playing number one film of the year, The Lost Boys, because they came out the same year. So that's a sort of a fun
That's
nod,
sick.
right?
If
Um,
I had like the world in the palm of my hands and I was feeding everybody all this different stuff and everybody loved everything I did, I would just plug all my own stuff in my other stuff.
as well, you should. You should definitely cross-reference all of the things that you do if you're able to. Uh, the movie made only $32 million in its theatrical run, but it only cost $8.5 million to make. So it was a very decent success, and of course, probably made a lot of money on DVD and video sales and rentals, et cetera, because it had quite a cult following. And then the last fun fact here before we wrap things up: the bridge, the bridge scene where they're all hanging and they fall into the cloudy, misty sky, and the train goes over them, and that whole thing. That is located right off of the exit that we all get off of to go to the ice rink to have hockey practices multiple times a week. The whole movie was filmed up in Santa Cruz, with the exception of that scene, which is called It's now been made into a pedestrian bridge, and it's called the Iron Horse Trailhead, and it's literally right off of the Magic Mountain Parkway exit of the 5 freeway. So it's something you can walk across, something you can go check out at your leisure. And if you're ever in Southern California, go check out the Iron Horse Trailhead, because that's where the Lost Boys were hanging off the bottom. Fun fact also, it's like only 10 or 15 feet off of the ground. It's not
No
high at all.
wonder they didn't die when they fell off.
And bravo. You get the snaps. Get the snaps for that one. Yeah, so I think that's super cool, and I did not know about that, and now I want to go to the Iron Horse Trailhead because I want to walk across the Lost Boys Bridge. That's pretty sick. That's
I
pretty
like
cool.
it. Are you gonna hang from it like you do?
Yeah, why not? It depends on if there's going to be water going under it, because it's like supposedly a creek, but we don't have water in Southern California unless we get El Nino. So we'll see. That remains to be seen.
True.
Any final thoughts on the movie? Yeah,
I
go
have
ahead.
a couple last questions for you, Dad.
Mhm.
Did you have a leather jacket?
I did have a leather jacket.
Did you have a mullet? Yes or no?
I did have a mullet.
Did you pierce your ear?
I did pierce my ear.
I think you're a vampire.
No, you've seen me walk around in the sunlight. Come on.
Not a lot.
Yeah, no, I've already talking about it all the time. I'll prove it to you tomorrow morning. I don't want you living in fear. It's sort of funny you bring that up, because this movie had a very big impact on 12-year-old Colby. It did play into my hairstyle choices. A good friend of mine in high school, we sort of created like a whole cast of characters, and that were highly influenced by the Lost Boys. We had dreams of writing our own vampire novels, and the Lost Boys had a lot to do with them. And they did wear earrings, and they had sunglasses, and yeah, probably a total rip off the Lost Boys. But at any rate, it was a very influential film back in the day. I didn't choose my hairstyle because of it, but it definitely helped me make the choice.
I will concede that one. But because it was a very 80s movie, you had a very 80s hairstyle. It makes sense.
I rocked the mullet. I'm sorry. I'm not going to make any apologies. I looked.
I'm so proud of you for you beat your denial.
It's taken me a long time to get to this point. A long time. It's taken me a lot of support from the people that I love, you guys and Mom, encouraging me to say yes. I had a mullet.
I feel like I need to hand you something, and this is like your acceptance speech for the mullet award or something.
Can it be like Ken Doll with the mullet? I'll take that.
That'd be cool.
Luke, does your brain have any more words in it?
No thoughts.
Brain empty. Well, excellent. I truly enjoyed our conversation about the Lost Boys. And hey, it's still Halloween time. Spooky season is out there. So if you're looking for something to watch, check it out. Maybe if you haven't seen it in a while, go look at the Lost Boys, go watch it, and then listen to our conversation. And we hope you've enjoyed the conversation, just like we hope you're enjoying the spooky season. So for Caleb and for Luke, this is Colby reminding you that 1 billion Chinese people can't be wrong. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. You can find the ColbyCast on Instagram, Threads, and X at the ColbyCast. Episodes can also be found on YouTube, so like and subscribe. If you feel so inclined, rate and review our show on your podcatcher of choice. That really helps the show beat the algorithm and helps us find new friends to add to the conversation. If you're wordy, like me, you can send an email to thecolbycast@gmail.com. All music is licensed through Adobe Stock and performed by ProMusic24. This podcast is not endorsed by anyone or anything for that matter. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the ColbyCast unless otherwise indicated.
That'll do, donkey.
That'll do.